Just 2 weeks into the Trump presidency, and Elon Musk, he is moving with his typical lightning speed to try and shrink the size of the federal government, raising some concerns, of course, about oversight. Treasury Secretary Bessent reportedly telling lawmakers that DOGE, that's, of course, the unit that Musk controls, does not control the Treasury's payment system. Reports to the contrary notwithstanding. Meanwhile, President Trump orders the creation of a sovereign wealth fund within the next year, saying it could potentially by TikTok. Joining us to talk about it all is Elevation Partners founder. He's an early tech investor, of course, frequent contributor to the program, Roger McNamee. Want to start off on Musk? I'm sure you have some thoughts about Elon and what he's doing.
Well, David, I don't think we've ever seen anything remotely like this before. The Treasury payment system, which is the largest of the things that he is attempting to manipulate, that's a system with code that's as old as 75 years. And it's really delicate. There's a lot of interoperating pieces that cover all the payments of the government and roughly a third of the payments of the entire economy. This is not something that you can just tinker with. And it's not something where you can send in, as Wired has reported, 5 or 6 kids fresh out of college or even fresh out of high school who are great programmers to go and look at it and then make any kind of changes without causing unexpected consequences that might be catastrophic. So the hypothesis which Wired and others have suggested is that the goal here is not actually to reduce government spending by a thoughtful analysis, but rather to reduce it by just crashing the systems. And that's obviously a really, really bad thing to do without a lot of preparation. And, I don't want to pretend like I'm the one who understands exactly the details of what's going on here. But if I were an investor looking at this, it's really hard to see a happy ending for investors coming out of this.
Yeah, although Elon Musk, state the obvious, is unique when in the business world, certainly the extent that I'm familiar with him. Nobody seems to move quite as quickly and potentially as aggressively and or with more effect than Elon Musk when you look at what he's been able to accomplish, Roger. And so it does seem to be that he's taking that approach in the U.S. government as well.
Yeah, but David, I think that's the key distinction is this is not a business. This is the federal government of the largest economy in the world. And it's not just something where you can move a bit here and a bit there and know what you're going to get out of it. It's an incredibly complicated, incredibly old system. I assume it's very fragile. There are very few people who understand the ins and outs. And for certain, the people coming in with Musk are not among the group of people who understand the details. And as far as I can tell, they're not interested in working with the people who do understand it. They're just going to go in and mess with it. And again, the unforeseen consequence of this could be far-reaching.
But first of all, do you not support his effort to try to increase accountability and transparency in government and make sure our taxpayer dollars are not being used for waste and being hemorrhaged and, open this whole process up and try to save the U.S. a lot of money in the process? Do you not? I
don't believe for a minute that that's what he's trying to do. I don't believe for a minute that's what he's trying to do.
What do you think he's trying to do?
I think this is purely self-interested. I think that what you're looking at is a group of people who are taking a tactic that they've used successfully in the business world and applying it to the largest government in the world with the largest number of tax dollars and the largest number of disbursements. And we don't know exactly how this is going to turn out, but the notion that this is going to lead our government to either be more efficient or wiser in the way it disperses things, I think is unlikely. And I wouldn't go to sleep tonight assuming that tomorrow morning that things are going to be better.
I mean, two things can be true at the same time, Roger. He might end up better off, or his long-term goal of getting to Mars might be furthered, and the government might also get more efficient, don't you think?
Well, I think he's for sure committed to his own goals. Whether there's any commitment to making the government more efficient, I find unlikely, particularly given that this is not how you would do it. If you want to make the government more efficient, you have to look at the political process. You have to recognize that the incentives of our political process have been, for the last roughly 40 years, to support the interests of business at the expense of the average voter. And I think if you want to make things more efficient, you probably look at that and change the way things are allocated. I don't see any indication that that's what they're doing. And from where I sit, again, when you have a system as complex as the U.S. government, you should be really careful and thoughtful about when you make changes. And there's no evidence that that's what they're doing. This is a shock and awe thing, just like what he did at Twitter. And to be blunt, what he did at Twitter didn't make Twitter a better platform. It made it a better platform for him, for his political interests. And I expect the outcome we get here may be like that, but it might just be catastrophic across a really wide range of things. And, for what?
Roger, finally, we mentioned the sovereign wealth fund. Obviously, there's TikTok still out there. The clock is ticking in terms of figuring out an outcome there. Any thoughts in terms of whether the U.S. needs a sovereign wealth fund?
Well, there are lots of points of view on that. I personally do not have one. The one notion I would put forward is that if the government is going to become an active investor, you need to have really, really good governance to make sure that that's done in an appropriate way. And we'll have to see what terms they put forward on it. The U.S. as a country historically has not gone that way. It has typically separated the government's interest from business interests. For example, when the government paid for the vaccines that fought against COVID, it didn't take a huge share of the profits from that. And what we're talking about doing here is doing that. And that I can imagine cases where that's a really good idea. And if that's what they do, well, that will be very interesting. But again, let's just see what they say.
Yep. All right. Roger, thank you. Always appreciate it.